He thought he committed the perfect crime until he did it again. Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Jennifer Corbin and Dolly Hearn. Viewer discretion is advised. At approximately 7:30 in the morning on December 4th, 2004, in a very affluent neighborhood in the suburbs near Atlanta, Georgia, a 911 call would be made. It was a neighbor to the Corbin family, and this was a very frantic, hectic call. She was stating that her neighbor Jennifer had been shot. She was on her bed. When the fire and ambulance arrived, they go straight to the bedroom where they find the woman of the house, Jennifer Corbin, who was 33 years old. She was lying on the bed, and they found a gun, basically right next to her hand. This was a revolver-type gun, a Smith & Wesson. Underneath Jennifer's body, they found some papers, and when they end up undoing those papers, they see that it's actually divorce papers. She is getting a divorce from her husband, Bart Corbin, a local dentist in the area. There is a bottle of wine found next to the bed with some drunken out of it. At first glance, this was an open and shut case. This was easy. This was someone who decided to take their own life. They got served divorce papers. They were about to go through possibly a horrible custody battle because they had 2 kids together, 2 very young children. This is a woman who may lose everything, if not half of everything. Open and shut. It's done. Case closed. Except, no. Jennifer was born Jennifer Monique Barber, and she was born on January 25th, 1971, and she was originally from Bowling Green, Kentucky. Growing up, everyone said that Jennifer was destined to become a mom. She was going to be a super mom one day, and that's exactly what she became. She would eventually get married to Bart Corbin, and the two of them had 2 children, and when this case occurred, their kids are 7 and 5. Her friend would describe her as being Miss PTA, the SUV-driving, baseball-toting supermom. She loved her kids more than anything. Everything she did in her life, it was for them. Jennifer was described as a really easygoing, very laid-back, very personable person. You could talk her ear off and she would listen to every word you say. She had this ability to connect to people. Even if, initially there's no way these 2 types of people would connect, she would find a way to connect to you. And quite honestly, when she met Bart Corbin, this dentist who was doing really well for himself, he really kind of fell into this family with a lot of love. They would say that they were very supportive of their daughter marrying Bart. They loved him. He was like, their son. He would actually travel with the family. He goes on vacations with Jennifer's family. He would spend weekends at their house. He would be very involved with Jennifer's family, and they loved him. He made everyone laugh. He was this really quick-witted, very confident guy. And, he had this personality that people tend to get drawn into very easily. A really likable guy. And as a dentist, he was extremely well respected. Patients had nothing but great things to say about him. And so going back to the day in question when Jennifer's body is found in her bedroom, what went wrong? What happened? Well, it turns out the marriage between Jennifer and Bart wasn't as easy peasy as everyone assumed that it probably was. It appeared that Jennifer had started some kind of online fling with a guy that she met online, and they would exchange, instant messages. Back then it was like Yahoo or AOL Instant Messenger. They would exchange emails, and it's, from what I understand, one day she had a printed out copy of one of those emails, and Bart saw it, and he flipped his lid. He went completely apeshit. But then it would turn out that Bart himself was also having affairs. They were not being faithful to one another. And it was actually Bart who initiated the divorce papers. And so when you go back to this scene, it all looks cut and dry. Like, okay, she got served papers. She did this to herself. The coroner, however, would say, no. Jennifer, the bullet had entered through the back of her head. No one does that. That's not a common practice because it's very hard to reach back behind your head and pull the trigger. It's doable. You can do it. But the trajectory of the bullet did not match with her putting the gun to the back of her head in a position that she would have been able to do. The trajectory didn't match. And then not only that, if she had the gun behind her head, the way she slumped forward, the gun should have fallen somewhere behind her or to the side, but it was actually next to her hand. It like fell next to her hand, and that just defies physics. This is an old style revolver. This is a very powerful gun, and when you shoot it, and if you're doing it close contact with your own head, you will have blood all over your hand. She did not have a single drop of blood on her hand, on any of her hands. There was also no gunshot residue on her hand. And again, this type of gun will discharge a lot of it. And so there should have been something on her hand, but there was nothing. So based on the coroner's findings and just sort of the way the crime scene looked, detectives would say, all right, we're dealing with the homicide here. This is not someone who did this to herself. So they're looking into the marriage. Obviously, they can see that there are divorce papers involved here, and clearly their marriage was at an end. They wanted to know where Bart's whereabouts were on the night in question. Well, he said he had gone out to eat with his friends, and then he had driven from the restaurant to his brother's house, and he got to his brother's house around 1:30 in the morning. He willingly gave all of the clothing he was wearing on the night in question. They tested it. They did not find a single drop of blood on any of his clothes. He willingly did a gunshot residue test, and he basically passed. There was none on his hand. But this was also well after the fact. He could have very easily washed his hands several times in the interim. But without any concrete evidence, they had to send Bart on his way, send him home. They're looking into this affair that she was having. Well, they found out something, kind of a bit of a bombshell about it, because about 2 months into this online affair that Jennifer was having with a guy named Chris, the detectives found out that Chris actually revealed themselves to be a woman, not a man. That was a surprise to Jennifer. However, the affair continued. As a matter of fact, this woman, who they now know is named Anita, they were exchanging messages within moments of the likely time frame of when Jennifer was killed. And through all of that, they were able to determine that Anita was actually in Missouri, and she was nowhere near the scene. There's no way she could have done it. She wasn't involved, so they ruled her out. At this point, when you have this really popular, well-respected doctor from this very rich, affluent neighborhood, this is obviously making news, and it's all over the place. Once Jennifer's murder is kind of plastered all over the news, they start to get a tip about another woman who had died under mysterious circumstances years prior. Specifically, a woman named Dolly Hearn. Dolly was also from Georgia. She was found dead in her apartment in Augusta, Georgia on June 6, 1990. She died almost the exact same way Jennifer did. Dolly Hearn had put a gun to her head, allegedly, and pulled the trigger, and she too had the gun, that fell next to her body, but the determination at the time was that the bullet also entered through the back of her head. Dolly Hearn was going to dental school. She met Bart Corbin sometime in 1988 or 1987 or so. They dated for about a year and a half, and it was always a very back and forth, on again, off again type of relationship. Bart was a little cuckoo, a little maybe controlling, I guess you could say. And so eventually Dolly says, all right, we're done. I'm breaking up with you. I got to go on. I got to move on with my life. Well, in November of 1989, Dolly's cat was stolen from her apartment, and she would later find out that it was Bart who did it. Bart stole her cat. Someone had stolen patient files from Dolly's desk. Then someone broke into her apartment and replaced her contact lens solution with hairspray. Her car is then vandalized. Her mailbox was broken and a package had been stolen from it. Someone had been stealing her mail. Someone filled her gas tank with paint. Not to mention, Bart himself is also very publicly harassing her. He is off the deep end with her. And it would turn out he was doing all of this shit. All of that stuff I just listed, Bart did it. By February 23rd of 1990, he comes to her apartment. He's banging on the door in the middle of the night, basically demanding that she let him in. She calls police. Police arrive and they say, you need to leave now or we will be arresting you. And so when they threaten him with charges of harassment and stalking, he says fine, and he backs away. And at that point, the harassment stopped. Then on June 6, 1990, Dolly's roommate comes home and finds her dead on her couch with a bullet wound through the back of her head. And the gun was found kind of next to her hand. However, when the ambulance arrived, the paramedics, inadvertently, they picked up the gun and they moved it. So there was no photo of the gun in the position it was found in. And so when police initially investigated Dolly's case, it looked like she had done it to herself. The information about the bullet entering through the back of her head, the case would become kind of inconclusive because they don't have proof of where the gun was, where it landed after she was shot. They have what people are saying, but they don't have proof of it. And that does make a big difference, where the gun would be at. Because again, it is possible to do this, but if the gun lands in a position it shouldn't, then it's very telling to the crime scene being staged. Not to mention, there was no connection at that point to Bart Corbin having any involvement in whatever foul play may have been involved in Dolly's case. But when police now learn this after Jennifer's murder, they're like, okay, this is the second time now this has happened to a woman in his life. The first woman, he stalked relentlessly. He kidnapped her cat. He did all this crazy crap. But Bart had what they perceived to be a very solid alibi for the night when Jennifer was killed. So they wanted to really look into it. So Bart said he had gone to a restaurant with his friends, and then he had gone to his brother's house, and he got there around 1:30 in the morning. So if he's at his brother's house at 1:30 a.m., he is now 15 miles away from where Jennifer was killed. Now, the time of death for Jennifer is said to be between midnight and 3 o'clock in the morning. 15 miles is a quick drive, for the most part, at that time of night. But when they look into Bart Corbin's cell phone data, they uncover that his cell phone was not pinging off the tower in his brother's area. It was actually pinging off the tower from the home he used to live at with Jennifer. Not to mention the fact he wasn't all that far away to begin with. He could have, even if the cell phone thing wasn't, there, he could have still driven to Jennifer, did what he did, and gotten back in plenty of time before the end of that time frame for time of death at 3 o'clock in the morning. Once all of this evidence came about, they started to look more into Dolly's murder, and they began to kind of piece everything together. And eventually, in December of 2004, Bart Corbin is now arrested and charged with Dolly Hearn's murder, and now being investigated for Jennifer's murder. So what they learned is that about a week prior to Jennifer's killing, Bart himself drove to Troy, Alabama, and he had gone there to meet a friend of his named Richard Wilson. Richard would eventually be brought in by police because they wanted to question him because Richard had owned a .38 caliber gun, which is the same type of gun that was used to kill Jennifer. Initially, Richard denied having anything to do with it, about, giving him the gun, but eventually he changed his story, and he admitted that he did give Bart Corbin the .38 caliber a week prior to Jennifer's murder, and they then confirmed that was the gun that was found at the scene was Richard Wilson's gun. And so now they have Bart Corbin dead to rights. On January 5th, 2005, Bart Corbin is arrested and charged with the murder of his soon-to-be ex-wife, Jennifer Corbin. They were going for the death penalty for both of these women. They basically said, we know this is premeditated murder on both ends. You had this built-up anger and aggression towards Dolly. You harassed her, you stalked her, you stole things from her, you kidnapped her animal. You did all of this crazy shit, and then she ends up dead and shot through the back of her head in a very awkward manner, something that's not easy for someone to do. Fast forward to 2004, you have this rocky marriage that's coming to an end, and if it doesn't go well for you, you're going to lose your kids. You might lose half of your stuff. There's a financial benefit for Bart Corbin to not divorce Jennifer. Even though he started the divorce proceedings, I think a part of me thinks he did that to make himself look like he wouldn't have killed her. Because if he's the one who started the divorce proceedings, why would he kill her? He's the one who wanted to do this. It is really kind of like the perfect setup. Bart Corbin is this, he's this fake person on the outside to everyone. This happy, jovial, kind, loving, goofy guy. While deep down behind closed doors, he's actually a freaking monster. He is a horrible, horrible person, a violent person, a scary person, and someone who clearly will kill. And for what, really? Someone who's that... And by the way, not to mention the fact, I forgot to mention this earlier, the person who found Jennifer's body in the first place wasn't Bart, wasn't the neighbor, it was her child. Her 7-year-old child walked in on his mom's bloodied body with a gun next to her. And that's how people found out that she had been shot, because it was her kid. That man left his child in the house after he shot that child's mother and left him in there basically for him to find his mom's body. If there isn't any more reasons to hate this guy enough, well, there's another one. The guy's an absolute piece of shit. The evidence against him at this point has stacked up so high. It's overwhelming. They have physical evidence. They have witness statements. They have plenty of circumstantial evidence. There's a mountain of it. They would have people come forward who were going to testify to say that, Bart looks like this great guy on the outside, but the reality is he was a demanding, control freak, psychopath, basically. That he was really good at acting the role of this loving father and husband. So with all the evidence and with the death penalty on the table, Bart Corbin accepts a plea deal. This is not to the liking of either of the victims' families. I understand that for sure. Because part of this plea deal was that he would be sentenced to life sentences for each woman. However, he would be eligible for parole. So instead of going to trial, possibly being convicted, and possibly being sentenced to death, we are now talking about the man who will go to prison, but can get out, possibly, one day. And so obviously the families are pissed about that, and I would be too. But to also drag the families through these horrible trials, see all these horrific images of their loved ones, bloodied bodies, to put possibly their children on the stand, their families on the stand, to have to go through all of that, some families don't. And some families, sometimes if you're going to, even if there is a lesser deal at the other end of this, not the death penalty, sometimes it's worth it to avoid all of that. I think it just depends on the family. I'm not saying that's her family or Dolly's family, but sometimes that's the case. And God only knows what he could have done to another woman, because he would have just gone on to find another one and, who knows, marry her, stalk her, and then kill her, rinse and repeat. He thought he had committed the perfect murder with Dolly. He got away with it for the longest time. He's like, you know what? I did it successfully this time. I can do it again. The idiot this a smart, intelligent, dentist, right? Couldn't piece together that it wouldn't be a red flag that his wife dies in virtually the exact same way that an ex-girlfriend that he stalked died. That's his own stupidity. That's him thinking he's better than everyone, basically. At any rate, he was convicted based on the plea deals. He did take them, and he was sentenced to life with the possibility of parole. I can tell you that he has been up for parole before. He has not succeeded. I don't know exactly how many times he's been up for parole, but for sure he's been denied at least once. And the odds of him ever getting out of prison, despite having that option for parole, is probably pretty low. Considering he admitted to killing both of them in the end, he did confess to it. He said, I did it. The fact that these were premeditated, the fact that he didn't really show that much. He wasn't really sorry for it. He didn't really show a lot of remorse. He's just a vile piece of scum. And if he continues down that path, he will likely never be paroled out of prison. And quite honestly, that's probably the best thing for society, for him to never get out. Two women who were guilty of nothing, really, nothing of violent. I mean, sure, Jennifer, okay, she had an affair, but you don't kill someone over an affair. She didn't do anything wrong. Not really. She was a great mom, a lovely woman. Everyone loved her. Dolly, she was going to have a really fantastic future in dentistry. It was her passion and her dream. She was going to rock it, you know? But she was taken from the world early, as was Jennifer. Both young women still right in the middle of their prime. And two children have now had to grow up without their mom and, quite honestly, without their father. That man took away both of their parents that night. I believe they went on to live with other family, so they stayed in the family. But for all I care, Bart Corbin could rot in hell for eternity. So, and in the end, both Jennifer Corbin and Dolly Hearn got the justice they both very rightfully deserved. But that is it for this case. True crime, a Rooney, Dooney, Dingleberry Dongs. I hope you found it interesting. As usual, please subscribe if you are new here. I tell true crime stories here on YouTube. That was the weirdest way I've ever said that. Hi, my name is Mike. If you are new here, I tell true crime stories here on YouTube, obviously. So please subscribe if you're into that kind of thing. Give the video a like, drop a comment, that way more people can see it. Make sure you hit the bell so you're notified of when I post new videos. I also tell short form true crime stories over on TikTok. You can find the link to my TikTok in the link tree of this video below. So it's easy to find. Feel free to follow it if you like. Also in that link tree below, you'll find the case list that I choose all these cases from. The case list is about 7,500-ish names long or so. If there is a case that you do not see on there, it is alphabetical for the most part, but you don't see it on there, send me a quick email. My email is also listed below. Just send me the name of the case, where it happened, and when it happened, and then I'll add it to the list. I can't promise you when I'll cover that case because I usually pick cases at random. However, if you are a loved one to a missing or murdered person and their case is unsolved, it's a cold case, or you want their story told even if their case has been solved, just let me know in the email that you are a loved one and I will make sure that case gets a top priority. But with that being said, that is it for this video, True Crime Rooney. So until the next case, ta-ta for now. Oh, fun. No.